Spring race weekend has arrived in Richmond, and we're getting you ready for the action. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Natalie Kalibat. Later on, we'll have a special look back at 75 years of history at Richmond Raceway, but we start by hearing from one of the Cup Series' most successful drivers. They call it Martinsville for a reason. Martin Truex Jr. mastered the paperclip for the third time in 4 tries last Sunday. Now we'll head across the Commonwealth to another track where he's been very successful, Richmond Raceway. I caught up with the Joe Gibbs driver to recap his win last week and look ahead to Sunday's race.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a lot of fun and a really neat place to win, obviously. And, taking home grandfather clocks is pretty fun.
Do you even have a place to put them? I mean, where do you put all these grandfather clocks?
Oh, yeah, I've got places. I got one in the house, one in the garage, and need to find a spot for the third one. So it's a good problem to have.
It's definitely a good problem to have. I'm sure you'll add a few more to your collection as well. Martin, let's talk racing success in Virginia. You've now won 5 races in the Commonwealth since the start of 2019. What has been your strategy on those short tracks?
Being patient and being around at the end, I think, is always key. We do good on the longer runs, and tire management and taking care of the car is a big part of that. And it's just something that over the years I feel like I've gotten better at, and it's really paid off. So, Richmond is going to be, more of the same, I would say. Racing there in the daytime this time around will be different, and that place is so difficult to get around in general, and then you heat it up in the daytime, it's even more difficult. So tire wear is going to be a huge issue, and a huge key to the race is how well can you take care of your tires, and at the same time, you don't want to give up too many spots on restart.
Last year's spring race at Richmond was canceled, and when we raced here in the fall, we didn't have fans. This weekend, you'll have the roar of the crowd. How does having the support in person impact your racing?
It's just great to see, honestly, going anywhere really, for that matter, without the fans just doesn't feel right. It feels like you're at a test session, and you can really feel the energy before the race when the crowd's there. So glad to have the fans back, and can't wait till obviously we're back to normal.
It's been a year of parity in the Cup Series. Martin Truex Jr. is the only driver to win more than one race. Chesterfield native Denny Hamlin is first in points, but he still hasn't visited victory lane yet in 2021. He'd love to change that at his home track where he's won 3 times.
We're getting closer. We're getting there. We just gotta, there's some saying that we can't win the next 3 races in a row.
When the green flag drops at 3 o'clock on Sunday, it'll be more than just another race for Hamlin. It'll be the first in his backyard as an owner, and his experience here has benefited 2311 Racing and his driver, Bubba Wallace.
That just, boosts everybody's confidence up, everybody's competitive levels up when you get to those tracks, and it shows. And so knowing that you have the success there, the previous success and competitiveness, that's big.
Chase Elliott won it all at Phoenix last year, but he's still in search of his first career win at Richmond.
Richmond's been a super challenging place for me personally. I know we have a few top 5s there, but really this last race in the fall I thought was the best we've ever been there. Just consistency and throughout the entire event. So I was really pleased with that.
Last year's race belonged to Brad Keselowski, and he's excited to have Martinsville and Richmond back-to-back on the schedule.
Those are 2 of my best racetracks. At Martinsville, we've been just so solid the last few times, and then Richmond was kind of a dominant race for us last fall. I was super disappointed that Richmond in the spring got canceled because of COVID, because I thought we'd be really good. But I'm looking forward to going back and hopeful to have the same success we had last fall. It's certainly a track that I've had circled.
The Truck Series will take center stage on Saturday afternoon. The 1:30 start will be the first race for the drivers since March 29th. The break was a welcome one for 19-year-old Derek Kraus.
The off weekends are nice. It's nice to be able to just relax for a weekend, but I definitely want to be at the racetrack as much as I can, and I'm looking forward to going back to the racetrack after a couple off weekends.
And they'll return in front of a crowd. For the first time since September 21st, 2019, fans will be permitted inside the gates of Richmond Raceway. Austin Hill clinched the regular season title here last year, and he's happy to see things getting closer to normal.
I remember when I was a little kid going to the racetrack and, wanting to see all my favorite drivers and get all the autographs and do all those things. So, hopefully we keep moving forward and we keep getting to a point to where we can start, signing autographs and doing all those things again.
John Hunter Nemechek will have one particular fan on his mind. His daughter Aspen was born on March 31st. Nemechek has flourished at Kyle Busch Motorsports and currently leads the points standings.
The resources that Toyota is able to give us and the resources that KBM has, being able to pick Kyle's brain on different things. And he has assembled a great team around me. Crew Chief Eric Phillips, who's most winningest crew chief in NASCAR Camping World Truck Series history, is awesome to be able to work with.
Last year's race was the first for the trucks at Richmond since 2005, so there was plenty of data to go through for Matt Crafton, who finished second last year.
It's going to be a very big strategy and trying to figure out, do you run hard? It's going to be short runs, it's going to be long runs. And that was my nightmare at the end of the race, just getting ran down and catching some lap traffic. And realistically, lap traffic still cost me the race.
Ben Rhodes was right behind Crafton in third last year. He'll have a lot of confidence after winning both races at Daytona to start the season.
I know what I've got to do, and everybody else has to deal with the same thing, which is managing the tires, the heat, the surface temps. And I think that's fun, right? Like, it adds a new level that we don't get at some other racetracks. And Richmond has that, short track feel that I grew up with.
Richmond Raceway is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. It's been the site of so many thrilling moments, close finishes, and heated rivalries. So who better than Raceway President Dennis Bickmeyer and legendary drivers Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace to be our guides through that rich history?
Well, when you think back, that's the World War II era, so people were returning home from war, and this was actually a fairgrounds, and it was a half-mile dirt track. And the racing was a big part of the fair that went on here. So that's really where it really started to gain popularity here in Richmond. Really, the 50s ushered in the era of some of the great characters in NASCAR, with Red Byron winning here, or Joe Weatherly, and then the stewardship of the Sawyer family, who purchased the track in the 50s as well. So, and then they took it through many, many decades here.
Dennis, it's pretty crazy. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, the backstretch was lined with trees, and you said fans would climb the trees just to watch the race.
Anything they could do to get a shot of the race cars here at Richmond Raceway. So that's when the track was a half-mile dirt track. I've run into so many people in the time that I've been here telling me stories about climbing the trees down the backstretch. There were some stories of people falling out of the trees, breaking arms, breaking legs, things like that, but they would do anything they could to watch their heroes race right here in Richmond.
Not afraid of heights too, right? I mean, you got a good view up there of the entire track.
Apparently not, and apparently some of them were very creative as well, because they would hoist their coolers up there into the trees as well. It was a long afternoon of watching some racing, so you had to have some cold beverages up there. In the 60s, wow. Well, first off, you got to say that's the era of 2 races at Richmond Raceway, and we've been enjoying that ever since. It's become a tradition here in Richmond. But again, now you start talking about more of the characters of NASCAR competing here. You had the Pettys. You had Lee Petty, who won in '58, still doing his thing here. And then you had a lot of great drivers coming through here. The Wood brothers from Virginia really helped put Richmond Raceway on the map, but it was also mixed with a lot of local drivers as well.
The 70s belonged to the king.
Richard Petty won 7 consecutive races here, 9 out of 10. He owned the 70s here, and he won 13 times overall here. So the 70s, the king, you're the man, you owned it.
Dennis, so many amazing memories at the Richmond Raceway. One we have to highlight: while leaving pit road, Dale Sr. was wiping his windshield. I mean, that is why he is a legend, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, to think about it, he's coming out of the pits, he's coming down pit road, everything's happening, going on in the race. He crawls out of the driver's side window. Car's moving, by the way, wiping down his windshield. I mean, so many people that day that I've talked to were like, wait, did my eyes just see that? Did he really hang out of his car, wiping the windshield down while racing's going on the track? Other cars are leaving pit road.
The guy was fearless, and we have to talk about the memory when he wrecked Darrell Waltrip, and Kyle Petty stole the show and went from there.
So he comes out of the pits, and he and Waltrip have been battling back and forth. Again, no love lost between Dale Sr. and Darrell Waltrip. Great rivalry.
Waltrip certainly remembers that day well. It all started with his owner, Junior Johnson.
2 to go, Junior comes on the radio and he says, "Darrell, pass that SOB now." I said, 10-4, Junior. So I'm trying, man, I'm just not having any luck. And Junior comes on the radio and he says, "Darrell," I said, "pass that SOB now." 10-4, Junior. So I drove off into turn 1.
Here's Waldrop, keeps him straight, but he keeps on tapping. Now Waldrop on the inside.
And got wheels down in the dirt, left side wheel in the dirt a little bit, and got under Dale and moved him up a little bit. I don't even think we made contact. Maybe we did, possibly. Made a little contact, moved him up the hill, and here I go. And I'm coming off turn 2, and Dale's over here, you know, and I think, boy, Junior is going to be so proud of me. I just passed Dale Earnhardt. I'm going to win this race, and about that time.
Oh! 4 cars, there it goes.
There's Bo 9 into the fence. Joe Redmond spins around. Who's going to win the race?
Dale hooked me in the right rear and sent me into the guardrail and tore it. I mean, just destroyed the car and knocked me conscious. I'm not sure it knocked me unconscious. It may have knocked me conscious. But anyway, there I sat, car destroyed. And I looked over and Dale was sitting over there. He had wrecked too, which was uncharacteristic of him. And anyway, he cranks up and he gets going, and I crank up. I got this old car and I'm bobbling around the racetrack, and I come up, the cars are stopped because it knocked a hole in the guardrail. I come up beside of Dale and I just wham into him with my wrecked car. And then they cleared the track, got us off the track. And I think afterwards NASCAR fined Dale for being a little rude about the whole thing, like, oh, we were just racing. No, we weren't just racing. We were just wrecking is what we were doing.
But earlier in that decade, our own Chesapeake, Virginia's own Ricky Rudd won a race here at Richmond, coming off a really bad crash in Daytona. People remember that because he taped his eyes open. He raced the entire race with his eyes taped open, went on to win the race here. So truly remarkable. And then you keep seeing all those big names come to the forefront here in the 80s, right? Guys that are in the NASCAR Hall of Fame now. So the Allisons, you know, Cale Yarborough, on and on. Loved coming to Richmond to race here in the 80s.
In 1988, Richmond Raceway was converted from a half-mile track to the current 3/4-mile setup. Richard Petty himself hopped on a bulldozer to get the transition going.
Now we were into this configuration, so guys were figuring it out and how to race around this 3/4-mile track. And one of the guys that had some success here in the 90s, Rusty Wallace.
Down the straightaway in the backside, but at the line. Rusty Wallace records his second victory of 1989.
Well, Richmond to me is one of my best racetracks. I won there 6 times, and I just love the shape of it. It's a 3/4-mile shaped racetrack that you can race all over that track. And for a competitor like I was, you wanted different options. You know, you just didn't want to rip around the bottom of the track every single lap. It was hard to pass people like that. But Richmond, man, you can run fast on the bottom, fast in the middle, fast up top. But the fans really, really love it.
And they really loved it on September 12th, 1992.
It was a rain delay. I dominated the race, had a rain delay, and we waited about 2 hours. And then the race started. I went on and won the race. But we'd always named our cars all the time. So I won the race, and I pulled into victory lane, and my PR fellow, a guy named Tom Roberts, come running up to me. He said, I got a name. I said, what is it? He goes, Midnight. Let's name this car Midnight. I go, why? He says, when you cross the line and they drop the checkered flag, I looked down at my little digital watch, and it struck midnight.
Dennis, what a way to start the 2000s. We saw a little bit of a father-son duel here at Richmond. Earnhardt Jr. passing his father.
Yeah, can you imagine what these grandstands were like when Dale Earnhardt Jr. passed his dad to go on and win at Richmond?
Junior comes by, uses the inside, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. will lead him back to turn 3.
I mean, this place just had to erupt. I can just picture it, just knowing how passionate our fans are about NASCAR, but about those 2 drivers in particular. So what a way to kick off the 2000s. But I got to tell you, the 2000s really defined by that last chance to get into the playoffs here at Richmond. It all came down to Richmond to get into the playoffs, to maybe win a championship. Jeremy Mayfield in the early 2000s raced his way in. Casey Kane, Jeff Gordon raced his way in a couple of times to grab a wild card spot a couple of times to get into the playoffs. So that focus of being that last race before the chase was really something, you know. A lot happened here at Richmond for those drivers to get into the playoffs.
Dennis, a really memorable moment happened right here when Kyle Busch wrecked Earnhardt Jr. What are your recollections of that night?
Well, I've watched that so many times on video, and those two continue to talk about it. But go back to 2008 in May, Junior and Kyle Busch going back and forth. Junior passes him down the backstretch, headed to the checkered flag. They get to about right here, and this is where all the controversy happens. Kyle Busch hits Earnhardt Jr. They crash into the wall somewhere down there, a little bit deeper into turn 3. Clint Boyer goes by and gets the win. And I think the famous line from Jr. was, Kyle Busch is going to need a police escort to get out of here, because the Earnhardt fans were going nuts around here.
We're here in Victory Lane. Dennis, you've been the track president since 2011. You've seen a lot of races. What's your favorite finish?
Well, for me, I've got to go back to April of 2016. So teammates, Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch battling it out. Carl Edwards bumps Kyle Busch out of the way, goes on and wins the race.
It became really tough. You know, do I bump my teammate or just follow him across the start-finish line? So I bumped him, and we got the win.
I would not have wanted to be in that Joe Gibbs Racing team meeting on Monday after that little bump and run to the finish. But I'll tell you something else that was special about that. You get to give Carl Edwards a trophy in Victory Lane. He turned around and gave that trophy to a young fan.
It's like Ryan Blaney giving the checkered flag to a young fan in the stands.
Well, you know, we're all about our fans here, and you know, without the fans, you know, this place would go away, and they've been the heart and soul of this entire facility for 75 years now.
The Truck Series gets rolling at 1:30 on Saturday, and the Cup Series will grab the spotlight on Sunday at 3 o'clock. I'm Natalie Kalibat. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the action.